If you think and believe that there are no good men out there and you're focusing on no good men, bad men, well, that's all you're going to see. That's all you're going to bring in because you're literally going to block out everything else. And so when we look at how men have treated themselves and treated others, we've also limited ourselves by behaving in a particular way. But men don't know how to really access that part of them in a healthy way.
It's in your face now. Like, there's not really any denying any of what the fuck is going on here. Now, what are we going to do as a culture to fix it?
And some people may like what I'm going to say and resonate, and some may not. I really don't give a fuck.
Yo, everybody, welcome back to the show. Today we're hanging out with my good buddy, Stefanos Safandos. Now, Steph is a coach and a speaker, and he does all those cool things. And what he primarily works on is creating masculine, feminine balance in men and women. He works with both, and he's so articulate and well-versed, well-educated on the way that we show up in our lives. Now, that may seem ultra spiritual, but something about Steph that I admire so much is how grounded and relatable the things that he teaches are. The way that they can be applied to your life and the way that you can really live through a more authentic way of being by applying the things that Steph loves to teach. And that's why, again, I'm bringing him on the show. He's, of course, a fan favorite, if you will. And on this episode, we jump into masculinity. We talk a lot about masculinity and manhood and even the role of violence and how that's played out evolutionarily. We talk psychology, biology, evolution, spirituality, and we even jump into that common belief that there are just not many good men out there. So this is a fun show. Again, I love having Steph on. Anytime I can get a chance to get him on the show, I snag him and we make it happen. Now, before we jump into the show, I want to tell you real quick about the Lifestyle Design Program. 12 weeks with me, one-on-one, working through your patterns, where you may be limiting yourself. And if you have that feeling of stuckness about you, or you want to make some kind of transition and it feels overwhelming and confusing, that is the thing that I love to work people through. Now, I'm not the holder of the answers, but what I do love to provide for people is a place and a space where you can say what you need to fucking say without judgment, without frustration, get it all out and provide a collage of practices that really fit your life. It's a lifestyle design program. You can check that out over at gettherealness.com. Click the lifestyle design tab. You can jump on a 30-minute call with me, absolutely free. Just talk it out, see if it fits for you, and hopefully we can make something happen. Also, something I was working on last night that I want to share with you because it's pertinent to this whole podcast thing. I'm sending out letters for podcast reviews. That's what we're doing here. If you leave a 5-star review on the podcast, leave some kind words, shoot me a screenshot on Instagram. That's Connor Wanders, Connor with an E, Wanders with an A on Instagram. Just shoot me a screenshot of your review. Let me know what's up. Send me your address, and I'm going to send you a handwritten letter that's full of life advice with absolutely zero context on your life. No context. I don't know what the hell you're going through. I won't be able to know from your podcast review unless you write it in there. But I will send you a letter with life advice that'll probably, I don't know, it might land, it might not. But I'll try to make it entertaining and fun for you. I really appreciate those reviews. They help me get amazing guests, and they've really picked up over the last month. We've got a ton of reviews. So super grateful for all of you out there that have done that. Of course, the best thing you can do for the show is listen if you enjoy it, obviously. If you don't like it, then you don't have to listen. That kind of goes without saying, but share it with your friends. Share it on social media. Take a screenshot, drop it on your Instagram story, tag me, tag the guest, for sure tag Steph, and let us know what you think. All those things help the show so much, and I really, really appreciate it. If you ever have any feedback for me or anything you want to share, let me know. I'm here for that. And I think that's about it. Try to keep these intros nice and tight for you now, because all you really want is that juicy, juicy content, which is coming your way right now. Oh, much love, guys. We'll see you on the other side. Now enjoy the show with my brother, Stefanos Safandos.
So I didn't know that you had you also have a fat kid journey.
Yeah, massively, man. And I've got an interesting relationship to food as well. I don't really share that because it never comes up to talk about it, but we're talking about it now. But I used to use food, man. I still do. Fuck, who am I kidding? I used to use food as a comfort, as a soothing process and action, because for me, like, part of my story at least, I grew up in the hard, just father violence, mother violence, just parents, volatility, emotional abuse, physical abuse. It was fucking intense, man. And so I'd go to my grandmother's house, my grandparents' house, and just basically, Italian grandparents, man. I mean,
I get it.
They're feeding you. It's not, there's no, there is food there, and whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, and it felt good, right?
Yeah.
So I cultivated this habit of eating to self-soothe, that and watching cartoons and Disney and escapism, And so I was quite a big kid. I wasn't obese by any means, but I was definitely a big kid. I remember getting teased about my weight a lot. I couldn't play sport very much when I was young because I was just big, man.
It's hard when you're young and big. I mean, I was about 6 foot and 200 pounds in the 6th grade, so I was just big across the board. If I could, and it's almost like but you're still a child. Like it's like you don't have enough testosterone to really have structure yourself, and you're like falling over yourself and tripping, and you can't.
Zero coordination.
Dude, I would fucking walk into door frames. Like I would just walk into stuff. I'm like, 2 weeks ago that door frame wasn't there, but now I'm bigger now, so I have to be more conscious. I remember the first time that I was taking my shirt off in my bedroom and hit the ceiling fan with my hand.
Oh wow!
I was like, oh shit!
Wow,
that's a thing now.
Man, I wouldn't. I was so embarrassed to go swimming. I'd swim with my shirt on.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
When I ended up moving in with my grandparents when I was 5, so like that was my way of being, was whatever you want when you want it, food wise, and that was they were it was like they were compensating, but that's how grandparents are supposed to be. Like I expect to take my kids to my mom, and they're just going to get like cookies and ice cream, and but that's a few weekends a year, not your life all the time. And I remember that was really hard. Like and whenever I lost weight, my whole life changed a ton. It was weird, and even to this day, I feel like if you were ever a fat kid, you're always a fat kid on the inside.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm like playing on house money now. It's like, well, this is almost like a video game now, because I know what it's like on the other end, where you can't talk to girls and you're like sweaty and weird and gross, and you can't really fit in the desks, and it's like this whole thing, and you're getting made fun of. And the only thing that you could excel at is football, or sport in some way where size is a factor. Yeah. But if that doesn't work out for you, then what do you do?
In Australian culture, man, it wasn't like that. I mean, obviously there's a massive culture here in America for sports, right? I mean, what are we talking about? That cornhole's a fucking collegiate sport.
It's the I cannot believe that cornhole is a collegiate sport. That's the most American thing of all time.
With viewers, I mean, it's on TV. I mean, it's
on ESPN 8.
This is epic. It wasn't so much like that in Australia. I mean, I just remember feeling massively isolated, man. Yeah. Massively isolated as a kid, and it was tough.
The one thing that was really funny, is how access to girls changed when I wasn't fat anymore.
Yeah.
And it happened between my junior and senior year of high school, or no, sophomore and junior year of high school.
Tell me what age that was.
So I was
15 to 17?
14 to 15. 15 to 16.
15 to 16, yeah. So it changed there. Probably a little bit later, 16,
actually,
17.
I'm wrong. It was 16. I was 16.
Yeah,
so
16
I was driving.
as well.
So yeah. And
16,
it was,
17.
and I remember my coaches, so I was supposed to, they were mad because I was an offensive lineman. So I was supposed to be big, and they were so pissed at me for I lost like 40 pounds. Shit. And the coach was like, Connor, why'd you lose so much weight? I was like, man, for the girls, coach. Like this high school thing's gonna end at some point. Like my all district like T-shirt isn't gonna do me any good in the rest of my life.
You
for
really
being a
say
fat
that?
fuck. I fucking told him to his face.
Wow, I feel sorry.
I was like, this isn't some kind of, what do you think this is? I think at that point I was starting to realize, like, see through how valuable or lack of value that there was in this thing that we had made our entire world. Like Texas football culture is a whole thing.
It's everything, huh?
It's everything. The whole town shuts down. It's like a cliche. It really is funny. It's odd. And people get so wrapped up into it. Season tickets, people getting excited, and their kids don't even play. High school football. 3A high school football. So like middle-sized high school football.
Wow.
It's odd.
Yeah.
It's odd, but the access to girls was such a funny thing. Then you go to like college, and then that whole thing changes. And I feel like there's so so much can go right or wrong depending on how you conduct yourself in college, I feel, as a man.
Oh man, that's so college again. So university for us is massively different than the culture in Australia. Like here, it's such a big thing where you go away from your hometown generally, and you go on campus, you live on campus, or you live just off campus, and you're there, you're immersed in the culture, and there's thousands of people at university, right?
Yeah, I think there was like 25, 30,000.
Yeah, but we don't get that many at university. I mean, sure, there are probably a one or two in Australia that have that many, but not. It's not like that. Like my university had 7,000 people in it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was Notre Dame, but it was a private Catholic.
Okay.
Notre Dame, right? So sister to here,
Yeah.
sister university here, and man, for me, for university, I was in, I was out. Like I went there, I did what I had to do, and I got out. I didn't get involved in the social side of things. We tried, like we have that culture in Australia, but it's not massive like it is here.
Huh.
It's different. It's really different. And so the way you are social, the way you're meeting women as a man is, yeah, you're meeting them at university, but it's just under a very different guise, very different. It's not like it is here. And when I say here, I'm assuming what I see in the movies has some level of relevance.
Well, so if you could project that into like words, right? So
Yeah.
what you see in the movies,
Yeah.
American college culture,
Yeah.
standard college culture, what do you see?
I'm seeing various groups of people. So I'm seeing massive segregation and different identities at university, almost carried on from high school. Like, you've got your nerds or your intellectuals, and you've got your jocks, and you've got your popular people, and then you've got whatever it is, right? And that almost translates to university. And I think that's segregation. We had that in high school as well. Obviously, that's how we start learning our way through the world. That was a tough one for me because I was always in different groups.
Yeah.
I would mix with some of the smarter kids because I really enjoyed learning new things. And then I'd also be with the popular kids, and then I'd be with the bad kids, and I'd do bad shit because I just wanted to be liked, because so many years not really having that, it challenged me, as a teenager, especially, becoming hormonal and that.
Yeah.
And so when I started coming into myself and started exercising more around that 15, 16 mark, I did the milk run. You know what the milk run is, right?
No, what's that?
Okay, so back in the day, we would have got this from the US. Back in the day, there'd be different companies, small little companies that would deliver milk and orange juice and juices and eggs and shit like that to people's doors. And so you'd have milk runners, and so I would do the milk run. So I'd be, and he'd scream it out, 2 liters, a gallon of milk and three quarts of orange juice and a carton of eggs, and you pick it up, and you'd know which house to go to because he'd tell you where to go. And then you'd run there, you'd run back, and he's still rolling, he's cruising in his car, and it's this like a truck, like a small truck, and you jump back on, and so you're on and off and on and off. And after a few months, man, I lost some weight because we had no choice, and I was enjoying it because I was doing it with my friend as well. And so we'd have fun. I fell off that truck so many times, so many times. But that for me started changing my relationship to my body as well.
Yeah.
So let me go back to the university thing. But then when it came to girls, and I started becoming more hormonal. I was still carrying that shyness from being a kid because I still didn't see myself as, I don't know, healthy.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Or like desirable.
Or desirable. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so in university, it wasn't so much the university scene for me. It was the weekends, going out, bars, clubs, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And that started to change because I got like a fake ID when I was 16, 17. I started going to clubs young.
Yeah.
And so that started changing my perception of everything, man, of me, of access to women, of access to just a completely new way of relating to myself as well. Because the clubs was a big boys game. I felt like a kid in that club, and I was 16.
Yeah.
In those clubs, you've got to survive in those places as well. Because I was going to, bars and clubs, not always, but most of the time, they're pretty rough.
Yeah.
And people are drinking and they're on drugs and they do stupid shit. And so this fight, we have a very strong fight culture in Australia as well. I don't know what it's like here. Probably certain parts of the US, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Texas and Australia are similar in that.
Probably similar, yeah. You're drinking and you're punching on the weekends.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what
like it's not a thing. It's not a big deal. It's
no,
like a
not
normal
really.
thing.
That's sort of what you go out to do. You sort of go out and you think, oh, what are we going to drink this weekend, boys? Yeah, we're going to drink and we're going to punch on. Yeah, let's punch on. Like you plan it. It's like, really? And so you do this. And man, no one ever, I don't think anyone ever really wants to do that, but you sort of cultivate a habit of it, and then you start changing your persona. For me, I started changing my persona and started thinking I was a lot better than I was, and then the arrogance and the ego, and I went through that process as well.
Yeah.
And that was interesting.
It's funny, yeah, that the same thing, it's almost like gluttonous in a way,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, now I have this thing, and it's kind of enticing, and it feels dark to me in a way now looking back, but it's slippery as fuck, and you're like, okay. It's a power game in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's either girls, which is a display of power and affinity in a certain way, or if that doesn't really pan out, or if somebody gets in the way of that, then it's physical power.
Yeah.
And what you can do with that.
Yeah, which also there's parts of us that's going to impress the girls anyway.
Yeah.
It's this primal thing that's going on in the brain and in the body, man, and it's almost like in a non-egoic way, an entitlement, like it's our right to do that. Oh, that's what we're meant to do when we're young. And not everyone thinks like this, but the people that I was associating with, that's what we did.
I mean, I think there's a place for it. I've said this a bunch of times. I don't really trust somebody who hasn't been in a fight before.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean? There's something there's something about that where it's like, even if it wasn't serious, or maybe it was like you're with your brother or something stupid, but sure. There's something about that unless you've been punched in the face in a real world scenario, you don't know how you're going to react when you get punched in the face in a real world scenario. And there's a lot you learn about yourself in that situation.
Massively.
And you can lose your shit. Like there's some times that, especially, I didn't really start getting into like fist fights until I was maybe in high school, like once, and then in college, probably 7 or 8 times that like things got real squirrely, and that's the way it went down. And it was more me jumping in. I think I got in like one altercation, like about myself, but somebody got beat up. I mean, I remember this time that I went and picked up a friend of mine because something happened on a party bus. And it's such a weird story, but something that happened on a party bus. Somebody got in a fight. I didn't know who the people were, or I didn't think I knew who they were. And I pull up to pick her up. She called, and it was just a friend of mine. She jumps in the car, and then my buddy from the gym walks up to the other car door, up to my window, and it's like, hey, one of our mutual friends got jumped by these 4 dudes. Like, got the shit kicked out of him. And I get out of the car and go see what's up. And he's like, he's got blood in his teeth. He's got blood coming out of his ears. Head's cut open. He's got his eyes kind of busted up. So me and those 2 other guys went to their apartment and knocked on the door and went in and just went to work on these dudes. It was like, that was unfair. And it was like something, it felt like there was something about it that felt so right, that me and 2 other guys could go into these people's apartment. Yeah. And there's 5 or 6 of them. We were outnumbered by 2 to 1, and start fighting people. Yeah. So what? But it was because this a friend of ours got jumped by these dudes. It was real weird. It was really a weird situation. But there was never a doubt in my mind that was the right thing to do. It was so odd. Yeah. I was probably 21.
Yeah. I wonder if that's for you, if that's a moral construct or something that it's that violence is innate within men, and trying to suppress that or rub that out of us is actually not a healthy thing. And so we have to come to a level of acceptance that men are intrinsically prone to violence, and how do we channel that violence in this cultural construct, because it's not acceptable and it's not really necessary to be consistently violent or express that anger and that aggression and that violence in today's day and age. We don't, in Western world, we're not in a war-torn country. We don't need to be that. And so I'm wondering, what's your thought on this statement that men are innately violent?
I think for me personally, I'll start with myself, is that I'm a bigger dude. Yeah. So I'm 6'4", and at the time I was probably 235, 240 pounds. I was a big guy. Yeah. And there would become situations where it was because I would say had size privilege and athletic privilege. I was
size privilege.
You know what I mean? Where it's I can get in here and make this thing stop quickly. I can subdue somebody without really hurting them that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been times I've been punched in the face and like not retaliated and just like got somebody to held them down type of thing until
Sure.
everything was resolved. Like
Sure.
my motives 99% of the time were to resolve the situation. But I can't say it wasn't kind of fun. So what is that?
There's an adrenaline about it.
What is
right?
that? Yeah.
There's a presence that comes with that.
Is there a protector like thing that's innate inside of my DNA that's like I feel drawn to this type of activity, and it's like maybe I'm so deep in a flow state because there is such an arousal to it that you don't even think, like there's not a question in your mind what you should do. You know, it's an odd
evolved
thing.
that way as well, right?
Yeah, and we've done that for way longer than we've been nonviolent.
Yeah.
Like we've never had a human culture that's not
years.
violent that we know of.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And so how do we, for lack of a better term, and these are the sort of questions that I grapple with, how do we undo that? And or the other question is, do we need to undo it?
And the thing about that's where I get caught up is, do we need to undo that, or do we find a way to channel that, or what's the violence a bigger or a symptom of? Like what's the bigger thing here? And if you do suppress it, what are the ways that it comes out in a sneaky, like I would say, like shadow expression?
Yeah. So I think this need to be violent, or this expression of violence, comes from a number of different factors that we're obviously we're tapping into some of that now in terms of evolution and how we've actually behaved as a species or a gender, or the roles that we've played over hundreds of thousands of years, 2 million years essentially. And is there something else there where we're resorting to violence as this go-to practice to protect ourselves, right? So to protect that because we feel threatened and because fears are coming up. And how much of the past, because we understand the complexity of the brain and the mind, right? How much of our past plays a role in the present? So if I'm walking down the street and I feel threatened, how real is that threat in the present moment, as opposed to what other unconscious factors are influencing me feeling over-threatened? Do you see what I'm saying here? Because, so I'll just take, again, me as an example. I grew up, again, in a violent household, so that was the norm for me. So while there's a level of conditioning there, I also have like an acute sensory awareness of, is something going to happen? And if it does, I'm more prepared for it. Right? And all these unconscious associations I make with elements or actions or things in my environment, right? Symbols in my environment, whether it's someone walking, someone has a particular hairstyle, someone's talking to someone in a particular way, body language, whatever it is, right? All of that. And so how much does that play a role unconsciously? Because that shit's in our nervous system.
Yeah. And you don't know that there's an arousal factor of that too. I think it's the word that keeps coming up, is it's arousal, where it's like, you may even not even know, not be able to consciously perceive what it is that makes you feel that way, but there's this kind of hair sticking up on the back of your neck. Yeah. Kind of your posture changes and things get a little different, and you're like, what the fuck is that? Yeah.
And then every moment is an opportunity to check the validity of that threat in real time. And so over time, what I started doing was doing that and checking myself and becoming more self-aware and asking myself, how real is this threat right now? Or is it actually just stimulus that's coming from suppressed memory or unconscious stuff? And what's actually really happening? Because every action I take is going to have a what I call an experiential outcome or a consequence, right? And so I can choose to engage and then perpetuate the violence or the violent tendency, which then becomes more of the norm for me, and then it's my constant go-to. Or I can look at it and say, do I really need to be violent right now? Is there anything to really protect? Can I walk away? Can I see it differently? Is it actually requiring me to physically defend myself? And man, honestly, I can't remember all the fights I've had, but I'd say 90-something% plus of them, I haven't started fights, but I've energetically started fights.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
You want it to happen.
Yeah.
Like you're not, you're going to be more excited if it happens than if it doesn't.
And simultaneously shit scared as well. And that's the adrenaline addiction too.
Yeah.
Like what can happen and how, and also like the egoic part of it, particularly with men, is the stories that follow. You're sharing those stories with your brethren post event, post war. You know?
Yeah. We don't have any of that. Any of that condition, like any of that there's no outlets for that really to create stories like that. And so it comes out, and then even going back to college culture, like frat culture is kind of a network of story sharing. And creating stories, whether it be sexual conquests or, used to call it like frat stomping somebody if somebody like got out of line. He's like, which is essentially just beating someone up. It was just weird things.
Were you part of a frat?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Alpha Omega. Talking shit.
Yeah, no, but it is interesting to see that. And then but there's something I think that's important to note there is that you were so acutely aware and understood violence and started to consider the consequences of violence that you knew how to handle yourself in the situation. And I think that's a different thing. If you know how to handle yourself in the situation, you're less likely, in my opinion, to overreact.
Yeah,
right. Because if you're like in uncharted waters, like I don't know what the hell how this evening is going to go. If you don't want it, I mean, there's not really a winner in a fight. I mean, there usually is, but it sucks for everybody.
Yeah, of course.
So if you know that, you're like, there's a cost across the board on this whole situation. Like I don't really know if I want to pay that price unless it's really, really, really important. And I think that's something about that. That's why I think people gravitate towards things like jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and these other fight sports, because knowing you can handle yourself, I think causes or helps you create more of a dissolving energy in those events than really getting in there and like wanting to prove yourself. Because what do you have to prove? Yeah. If you go to jiu-jitsu twice a week and you like are getting choked and choking people out, and it's that's part of the thing, and it's a camaraderie around that expression. Well, then you don't have the dude that's talking shit in the bar doesn't really like what do you prove there? Yeah. Because you have a community around of essentially like a tangible way of expressing that innate desire.
Yeah. I agree with that. And so the less, so I'll share two stories on that though. So I'll throw a bit of a spanner in the works there as well.
Don't know what that means, but I'm excited.
Oh, don't you? Okay, that's an Australian saying. I'm gonna stir up the story and make it a little bit more challenging. Give us some food for thought, right?
Okay, let's do it.
So for me, the less confident I was, the more I wanted to fight. The more confident I was in myself, and not only my ability to protect myself, but also just in myself, and had greater self-worth, like the less I wanted to fight. Man, I didn't want that, Yeah. Now, it's an interesting story because I've been involved in the fight scene for a long time. You're just training elite athletes and world champion fighters. I'm very blessed to be in that scene because I've learnt a lot from it as well. And one time there's this fighter that came over from Greece, and he was he was an epic boxer, like top 10 ranked in the world. Was it featherweight or bantamweight or something? Super light. So I'm trying to give you an example. He fought at low 60 kilos, so 100, 130.
140 pounds, yeah.
130, 140 pounds, a light, right? He knew how to bang. I mean, he'd been fighting for years and years. He wasn't a world champion fighter yet, but he just knew how to fight. Yeah. And he grew up on the streets as well. And man, all he wanted to do, he came over, and I wasn't babysitting him, but we became friends because we shared a similar culture and so forth. We'd go out, and he was still very strict with his training regime and so forth, but all he wanted to do was fight. He wanted to go out to clubs and fight. and it bemused me. I didn't understand. At the time I didn't. Now I get it. He was very angry at life. Yeah. And so for him, he saw that, well, I'm good at fighting, I may as well get paid for it. Yeah. And so there's that side of things as well, where all he wanted to do was just release this pent-up aggression, but because he wasn't actually dealing with his repressed shit. And this is, I think, so many, not just men, people do this, right? Yeah. He wasn't dealing with it. The only way he knew how was to get primal and just go back to his biology and do what he did really well, which was hurt people. Yeah. And he didn't care if he got hurt. In fact, almost a bit sadistic. He wanted to get hurt.
Wow. See, that's the complete opposite experience of having any elite level fighters that I've ever met. With the exception of one who liked to fight, but he fought so often that it was whatever. But even talking about my buddy Kyle Kingsbury, like Teddy Bear, Tim Kennedy, Teddy Bear. Yeah. I mean, he's a killer. Yeah. My friend Daniel Dawson, 8-time multiple world champion across boxing, Muay Thai and kickboxing. He's no joke. He's 42 and he's still fighting in one championship. Humble, humility, kind, compassion. What a fucking human being. What a human being. Yeah. Like, he's zero to prove. When he was younger, a little bit different. But now, he's got kids, he's got, married, he's got two kids
girls.
Will tame you out a little bit.
But he's always been humble though, always been humble. And man, he is lethal. I mean, we're not just talking about, he's a weapon. He's a weapon. Literally, I mean, just so beautifully humble though. Yeah. And he's a brother. Like,
kind of like Mike Tyson, just humble and gentle and kind.
Now, I think that's what we see.
Yeah, God, that guy's still fast as hell.
Yeah.
So when looking at what the work that you do, and you work mostly around, you had a good little rant in the car today. We were driving to Erewhon to get our very masculine lunch at the bougie.
Because we're not privileged.
Yeah, at the bougiest grocery store of all time.
Oh man.
God, LA culture.
Hey, just on that, just speak about bougie. So I was in Geneva in Switzerland, like, I don't know, a couple of months ago. Went to this gym. Gym was not bad. It wasn't great. $55 for a casual drop-in.
Oh wow!
Talking about bougie.
Damn.
No, sorry, not 55. 75. Sorry, I'm
$75 for a drop-in.
And it wasn't as good as Equinox.
Wow.
Equinox, whatever. Yeah.
Damn.
Talk about bougie.
Well, now Equinox is on the Trump train. So
what do you mean?
People are dropping out. One of their principal investors and I guess, I don't know, the CEO of the parent company or something like that. One of the big guys at their parent company was holding a fundraiser for Trump in New York in the Hamptons. Yeah. And it got public and people get freaked out.
And so they don't want to join Equinox now?
People are bailing on Equinox and SoulCycle.
Oh. I'm openly not a fan of Trump. And then besides, I don't even know what his policies really are, and just how he presents himself. It doesn't rub me the right way. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no.
I wouldn't be.
I don't think Trump's rubbing anybody.
And I don't think anyone would want to rub him, or nor would they want to be rubbed by him. But I'm being mean now. But I just don't. I don't resonate with him. But I mean, what's that got to do with?
I don't know. It's like not the trainer's fault, the people that work at Equinox, but it is what it is. It kind of caused a little bit of a Twitter outrage.
Oh, well, maybe they'll drop their prices then.
That's what I was hoping, was that they have like a 1-year discount for like $300. And I'll just cash in on that real quick.
Anyway, you got on about something.
No, but you were talking about the situation that you're in, because you speak about on matters of masculinity and manhood. Yeah. But what you were saying today is that you're not telling people how to be a man. Like, who am I to tell people how to be a man? No. So when you talk about what you do, like, what is that really, if you were to boil that down, what is that to you?
To me, it's providing men with the men's work I do. So but I do work with women a fair amount as well. But when I'm working with men, it's really providing men with a safe place and a place where they can connect to other men and tribe. And then just sharing ideas on consciousness, spirituality, physical health, vitality, purpose, family. What does it mean to be a man in today's world? I don't have the answer. I've got some ideas. I'm happy to share that. I do a lot of research in that space. I look at history. I look at our evolution. I look at our biology. I look at our psychosocial reality. I look at our emotionality. I look at all that stuff. I look at our intrapersonal relationships. I look at man's development over time, his role in a geopolitical, socio-cultural sense. And not to get too advanced, but at the end of the day, I just want to bring men together so we can jam and just connect. That's really what it's about. And I mean, I've got 1,800 men in a private Facebook group, the Conscious Man.
Yeah.
And we jam there, man. Sometimes the questions get a little bit funky, but hey, it's a safe place, right?
But that's the thing. It's like, there's no funky questions, and we're not going far enough.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, and there's a lot of questions about masturbation and what underwear you're wearing and lubrication and all of that. And hey, that's okay. Your sexuality is part of being a man, right? But that's what it's about. It's really what sums it up is how I've got some ideas on not how to be a man, because men know how to be men. Yeah. But it's more about, there's been a massive movement in the world with feminism and the rise of the feminine and the rise of women. And rightly so, because they have been considered a minority group. They've been treated as a minority group by society, and they've been repressed. And so there needs to be some give there. There needs to be some greater balance and equity coming in, because we need that as men and the world needs that. And as so many men have, and some people may like what I'm going to say and resonate, and some may not. And I really don't give a fuck, because no, I don't, because it's for me, it's very evident and it's very difficult to refute. And those that are refuting it are really coming from a place of ego and power hungry. They're trying to hold on to their power and their way of living. We spoke about that as well. And so as men, as a collective, have really repressed a great deal, because when we look at leadership in the world, who's leading? What gender is mainly leading?
It's mostly men.
Mostly men, yeah. So whatever outcomes, we're responsible largely, directly, for the quote-unquote good and the quote-unquote bad. And so when we look at how men have treated themselves and treated others, we've also limited ourselves by behaving in a particular way. And so what would the world look like? And this is a question, I don't necessarily have the answers, but what would the world look like if we started behaving very differently as men?
Yeah.
We started treating ourselves differently and treating others differently. And so when I say others, I'm talking about specifically here, just people that aren't men or aren't considered men. What does that actually look like? And can we become more inclusive and more equitable? Now, equity and inclusivity are feminine constructs or feminine expressive energies. I get that. I'm not saying that we hyper-feminize men. The exact opposite. When people come to me,
But I feel like that's happening a lot.
It's too much.
Is that spiritual development or personal development is done through the lens of the way the feminine develops.
Yeah.
Most of the time, like that's kind of setting the standard, right?
Yeah.
It's like business development is
Yeah.
very heavy masculine in the way the man develops,
Yeah.
and then through spiritual or personal or whatever kind of growth you're talking about, that's done and dictated in the patterns of the feminine. Even if it's a man leading the situation, it's very much in the feminine, I feel.
Yeah, and we were talking about this last night. We mentioned this. Traditionally speaking, spirituality, expansion, universal consciousness, the cosmos, that's the domain of the masculine. Doesn't mean that a woman can't hold that space within herself, or the feminine can't be that and embrace that. But what it actually means is that there's a bit of a pole reversal that's happening right now. And I think we're confused as a society.
No
I think
shit.
we're confused as a gender construct. I think we're confused as well. And then we're going beyond just cisgender. We're looking at all of these other gender types that are occurring now. I think Facebook, by memory, and don't quote me, but there's 67 gender types or something that Facebook have classified, or is it Google or Facebook? I think it's Facebook. And so all of a sudden we've gone beyond binary gender, at least at a cultural sense. Yeah. At a culture. People like, what's his name? Not Sam Harris. He's on the radio here. You see his billboard when you're coming into LA from San Diego. Oh man.
What's his deal?
He's actually pretty cool and he's intelligent. I just can't remember his name, but he's basically, damn, it will come to me. And if it doesn't, we'll put it in the show notes because I'll look it up
Figure
after.
it out.
Yeah, but he's a big advocate of binary gender and saying if you're born a male, then you're a male. But if you're born a female, you're a female, and that's it. Yeah. And so there's this controversy that's going on. So we're more confused than ever about how to behave, and then throw men wanting to actually get closer to women as well, and get closer to their children and get closer to other people. And so they're asking, well, if I've behaved a particular way and it hasn't really resonated with people, I need to behave differently because I still want intimacy and closeness. We all want that. Yeah. It doesn't matter what gender you are. We thrive in intimacy and closeness. And so there's just so much confusion. And so part of what I want to do is help men still be men in a healthy way, still connect to their bodies, still understand what does it mean to be in a tribe, because we've evolved that way. How many men in this world today are isolated and lonely? Nearly every man that comes into that group, because they have a questionnaire that they answer, most of them answer it. The vast majority of those that answer it are there because they feel lonely and disconnected, and they want to be in the company of other men, and they want to share ideas with other men. Yeah. Men are isolated, man. And don't throw us a fucking pity party, because we've also done that for ourselves. But we've created those circumstances.
I think the responsibility there is important.
Yeah,
right?
The ownership of
there's
that.
this whole thing, and fucking to bring it back to Trump, like this, like it's a tough time for
Trump.
guys thing. Like, it's not a tough time. It's a tough time for lots of people in lots of different scenarios. It's a confusing time, I'd say, because it is confusing, and there's certain ways. Like, man, I've done some things, and I was actually talking about this on a podcast the other day. Like growing up where I grew up, and we spoke about that a bit. I used the word fag probably 3,000 times in my life before the age of 21, and didn't think twice about it. Yeah, 100% cultural. Yeah, it wasn't meant in like it just. That's just the thing that we would say. I get it. I don't use that in that way anymore. But it was me like, fuck, I'm wrong. Shit, that was not cool. And somebody called me out on it finally after college. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that's a small behavior change, but it's something. And it was an indicator to me of how. Well, if that's a thing that I've been doing and didn't think anything of it, like what other things am I carrying around that are hurtful or dangerous or derogatory in some way that I'm not even really conscious of. Yeah. And then if you don't have a space where you can ask those questions and be like, hey, I feel like this could be
without judgment too.
In this judgment free space, and that's what you're creating is so helpful, because I just want to suss this out, because I don't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm doing here. I want to, I want good connection and a fulfilling life. I'm not trying to be a dickhead here.
Yeah, but I want to. I completely agree with you, and I've been in that situation as well, man. Where it hasn't just been derogatory terms like that; it's been sexism and racism.
Oh yeah,
and again, there's so many studies that have been done on this that we're so racist. All of us are so racist, because especially Caucasian people, because of the privilege that we've been brought into and the underlying assumptions of what we have access to and who we are in relation to everybody else. And that's a systemic thing. But I want to go back on something for a moment on judgment. Right? Judgment is, we judge. Our brains compartmentalize the world around us and we judge naturally. It's a natural thing. I'm talking about that harsh judgment when someone disagrees with your perspective or point of view and you take it so seriously that you're ready to blow up the world.
Yeah.
You're ready to go to war because of that. And it's that type of judgment that has really, I think, held us back as men and held us back as a humanity, man, massively.
Yeah, and we do that to each other across the board.
And to ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I know how judgmental I've been of myself because of the environment I grew up in. That was the norm. The self-talk that I had was, oh man, horrific. And so I would bring elements of that, maybe not directly to other people, but the essence and the energy of that.
Yeah.
And it would influence the way I communicated and connected and saw people and allowed people to see me. And my temper and my frustration was so high and my patience was so low. So low. With the moment someone disagreed with me, man, my voice would raise, I'd arch my back, I'd be ready to fight.
Yeah.
Verbally, emotionally, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a conditioned thing, man. And we have to undo a lot of that because all we're doing is just continuing to push those that we love away.
Well, that's what gets into this conversation of you say something that's inappropriate, or you do something that's not okay, and then somebody is supposed to be like, hey, that was hurtful, whatever, fill in the blank, like in a calm manner and like keeping the conversation at conversation level, not argument level. It's like, check your fucking privilege, you white motherfucker. Like that's like it goes straight there, and it's like, whoa, dude. Like, and then how are you not going to be defensive?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times the people that are, and let's call them like far right style people, like Ben Sharpio, who's who you were talking about.
I fucking love you. Yes. Sharpio, whatever his name is.
Shapiro,
yeah,
that guy.
He's an interesting guy.
These like far right, alt right guys are on the fucking defense, and if you look at the alt right, it's a bunch of people, white men, who feel alone and found a community in something where they get to confirm their own rightness and then project that out as if the world should be that way. And it's a product of all of this shit that we're talking about. It's systemic, and it's right now. I think we're at a point where it's all coming to a head, and it's all getting really, really fucking obvious.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing, and that's why I'm grateful for this whole Trump situation, because at the end of the day, it's like, well, here it is. Here's the fucking mess we made that everybody's trying to put, sweep under the rug. It's in your face now. Like, there's not really any denying any of what the fuck is going on here. Now, what are we going to do as a culture to fix it?
We're going to build a wall and we're going to create jobs.
Yeah. Build a wall.
I just want to dig. I just want to dig, man.
Yeah, I just want to build walls. That's all I want to do.
I want to dig. I want to help out.
Bill Burr has a bit about that. And he's like, motherfuckers, by the time the wall is done, we'll be the ones trying to get over it.
Oh, it's so good.
But man, it is funny that we get it. It's all right in our faces, and I actually I'm glad for that, and I think there's going to be some massive change. But when you talk about men specifically and the changes they need to make and we need to make as men, not they, us, all of us.
Yeah.
What are the biggest blockages that you find between where we're at now and the men that you've worked with and being able to express yourself fully, honestly, and create connection from a place that's more liberated?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say to that is that men are inherently fucking awesome and good. And I really want to make a point of that because there's so many people talking about toxic masculinity and unhealthy masculinity and associating that with the biological gender of being male and so forth. And whilst there's elements of that are obviously connected, it goes well beyond that. And men are inherently fucking epic. And I think humans are, full stop. Humans are inherently fucking epic. And the more that we can tap into that power, the more we actually can express that power. But to answer your question directly, what I'm seeing is that men don't know how to emote. Men don't know. They literally don't have the skills and the tools, not all of them, but they don't know how to emote. Like I had a client this morning, very successful man, super successful in the outside world, right?
Yeah.
And he's got a family, loving family, children, etc. The first thing he said to me was, I don't know how to tell you what I'm feeling because I don't do this. And so I don't have questions for you because I don't know what I'm doing here, but I know I want to be here. This is a guy that's paying me a lot of money to work with me, right?
Yeah.
And so I've got to get creative. But he's representative of so many men. He's honestly repping so many men that just don't know how to express themselves in a healthy way because there's so much fear around being judged. There's so much fear around being wrong. And that's a systemic thing, right? Because men aren't wrong. We know how to do shit. We know how to fix everything.
Yeah. Don't ask for directions.
Don't ask for help. We live in an isolated society. It's an individualistic society. It's perpetuated systemically by capitalism. And this isn't a dig on capitalism. It's the way that it's part and parcel of our socioeconomic models and where we are today and who's largely in that and what ideology and character it perpetuates. And so men don't know how, and not that feeling and emotions are everything. It's part of being human. But men don't know how to really access that part of them in a healthy way. That's a big pain point. And so what they do is, because they think they're not good at it, because they don't want to ask for help, because they think that they're going to stumble and fall multiple times, because it's super uncomfortable, because so many people have experienced pain and suffering in their lives and they're coming from fear and they've had yucky experiences growing up. Maybe it's trauma at an extreme end. Maybe it's just shame and guilt at other ends. They don't want to touch those emotions. So it's better left in the closet or suppressed in the trunk or in Pandora's box. And we don't want to open that box. So what do? We just keep going around life, taking action, being ourselves, which hasn't changed for years and years, but it's still perpetuating the same discomfort within. The mindset hasn't changed. The way that we relate, the patterns and behavior in relationship, they don't change. And so we keep getting more of what we don't want, but we're not willing to go where we need to go to get something different.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest issues that I'm seeing.
Got it. And so when that's the case, where do you start? What's step one in that process of opening up the box?
Yeah. So for me, it's about building trust and rapport. And it's about helping them see that there is another way. And honestly, I start in the body because the body is really tangible. Your viewers can't see me or your listeners can't see me, but the body is really tangible. Like it's very real. At least it feels real. I don't want to get into Eastern mystic discussion about what's real and what's not and consciousness, but the body feels real enough. So let's start with health and vitality. Let's start with making some improvements in your health and vitality because most men are sedentary. Most men aren't fit and healthy. Most men don't have an exercise regime. In fact, most people don't. I mean, we look at obesity rates in the Western world and it's fucking out of control. So let's start in the body. Let's start looking at how can you feel better in your body. And so if they can start expressing, hey, I feel good today. I have more energy today. Hey, I slept well. I feel more alive today. Well, that's interesting. Okay, now they're expressing feelings. So they're getting into an unconscious habit without even knowing that they're expressing feelings.
Sneaky motherfucker.
Sneaky. And so start in the body, right? And it's a good place to start because you know what? Who doesn't want to have more sex? Who doesn't want to be more appealing to the...
I don't think I could physically have more sex than I'm having right now.
Yeah, well, most people aren't as attractive as you, Connor. As you, Connor. Well,
it's not me. I'm not. I think I choose to have sex like once a month, and other times I'm just getting mauled.
Well, I can see why.
We have Kelly over here just smirking at me.
I can see why shaking her body around. But most men aren't.
Yeah.
Most men are fucking jerking off in front of a screen of some sort, you know?
Man, yeah.
Ooh, that's good. We should talk about VR and the future of sex.
I don't know. I really
pornography.
I think that's a whole other podcast, my friend.
I think so. But, you know, so that's happening. So when I say that, who doesn't want to be more appealing and more loved, essentially is what I'm saying. It's not about more sex or better sex or whatever, but it's about that. And I do my best to meet people where they're at. And that's very humbling as well because, man, there were times in my life where I wanted to be heard and wanted to be seen so much especially during my childhood. And I just didn't feel that from fucking anyone.
Yeah.
And so I think we can create small communities in our lives where we can meet each other there. I think that's very impactful and that makes a big difference. And that helps us open up because that creates a spaciousness in our minds and in our bodies and in our hearts. And then we think, oh, maybe I'll try this emotion thing. Not that emotions are everything, but it's part of who we are. And so if we're limiting ourselves there, I don't know, man. I think it's like we've got a tool belt on and we're about to build a house, and all the tools, there's spaces, there's holes in our tool belt for all the tools that are required, but we're missing 30-40% of them. Well, I mean, that's how are we going to build that house effectively? We're going to be able to live in it? Really?
I mean, maybe. Probably not, though.
Maybe we're probably
If you live
not.
in Venice, you probably pull it off. But
You could build anything. Cardboard, plastic bags.
Yeah.
You could build,
you just need duct tape and a good attitude.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of the time,
some
the
good
house
duct
is not
tape
gonna
out
be,
there.
Yeah.
At the moment, I've seen it on TV, on the infomercials. You put the duct tape on the leaking pipe that's gushing out with water, and it's just gone.
Yeah, it's just good
Gone.
forever. It's permanently fixed. That's how we deal with our emotions.
Basically.
No, but you're right there. And there's something about the community built around, hey, there's a shared agreement here that there's people are going to say things that may on the face seem fucked up.
Yeah.
Or seem wrong.
Yeah.
But you've got to once you can hear yourself speak them out, and you're like, okay, at least I feel seen. And it's like, hey man, you could probably change that belief, that behavior, that way of thinking. And we're here together to like make that happen. It's so incredibly powerful. I mean, I saw that at the realness retreat where we go down to Costa Rica, and of course there's ayahuasca involved, which cracks you wide open. But just that space where we're kind of secluded out there, it's incredibly safe, and it feels very safe. But you're out there, and it's a community of people that are cracking open and just sharing what they need to share amongst groups that they create themselves, and done in a way that's constructive and without judgment, and you're seeing each other in a very vulnerable state. And I think that feeling seen and safe allows you to access a vulnerability within yourself that you can't really do alone necessarily. I think through meditation and different practices you can get into some of that, but I think that's part of the interconnectedness that we need is expressing vulnerability in what we feel is broken about us with others, and not being abandoned or left or judged. And that gives us faith and reassurance that there's something we can do with ourselves to move closer to a more fulfilled, holistic human being.
Man, I very much resonate with what you're saying. And what came to me then as I was thinking about that, because you were talking about vulnerability, and I was thinking about, okay, men, vulnerability, expression, being seen. I mean, I think a nice analogy is that you're learning a new skill. Maybe there's been a kid that's been playing golf since he's 5 years old, and now he's 30, and he can just play, whether he's a world champion or not is irrelevant, he or she, and they can play golf, no problem. Like they play golf all that. They know the technique. They know where to place their feet, their hands. They know what clubs to use, all of that.
They're not thinking about it.
They're not even thinking about it. Men, culturally and socially, are not conditioned to be vulnerable and express themselves. Now, that actually works in some instances where it's not healthy to be vulnerable, because if you're too vulnerable, your life will be at risk.
Yeah.
But there are moments, especially in today's society, how we've elevated our consciousness in the way that we relate to each other, our interpersonal relationships, where being vulnerable actually helps our game. It helps our life's journey, right? And so you're getting adult, big-ass men in a position where they've never practiced vulnerability before, because they've been told or taught systemically, collectively, individually, covertly, overtly, hey, don't be vulnerable, don't be emotional, don't express yourself, don't learn how to express yourself healthily. You just repress that shit, get on with it, do what needs to be done, do. And so you've got 30, 40-year-old men that are being told by their families, friends, etc., hey, this isn't on. I need you to communicate. I need to hear what you're saying. I need to understand you. You're not expressing yourself. I'm not getting who you are and what your needs are. This frustration, this venting, this pain what is it all? And men don't know what to do. Like, they're swinging a club as if it's a baseball bat, but they should be playing golf, you know? And so we almost only have one gear as adult men. We're either hyper aggressive or we're hyper passive.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
And that's what sort of needs to change. And that, I think, begins as well, educating parents, educating adults, and then adults training children to some degree, or exposing children, or even better, forget about training, leading by example.
Yeah.
Leading by example. And so children can learn, wow, that's what an emotionally healthy human being looks like.
No shit, man. That's huge. And I think when you look at this, and what you're speaking about is learning to share your feelings or emote and be vulnerable. It's going to be clunky and weird.
Yeah.
It's like
There's
riding left-handed at first. Yeah.
It's
like the first time you drove, you're like, I'm like anxious. And it feels very similar to that. Or the first time you had sex, like you don't really know what's going on. You're a little bit overwhelmed. And it's the same thing when it comes to expressing your emotions. If you've never done that before, it just is not going to be smooth and easy. at first, and that's okay. And maybe you'll get angry and frustrated, and then frustrated with yourself, and have to work through that. But you at least have opened it up, because if the other end of that situation is a repression, and then an epic fucking breakdown and like feeling lost and that whole thing. And that's, I mean, if you want to go down that road, that's where a lot of people get to before they reach out for help. Yeah. And I've seen that a ton, but it is one of those things that you have to accept that you're just not going to be that good at the beginning, probably. And that's okay. Yeah.
I think that level of acceptance is everything. And I think that level of acceptance, brother, is something that probably needs to be taught to us as well. And that it's okay to quote unquote fail. It's okay to not get it 100% right. I know in my life I've been a perfectionist, and it's stopped me from either taking action, or I've taken action and just hated on myself, hated the process, have been very angry about it because I haven't got it the first time perfectly. Yeah. And I've really suffered for it, man. I really suffered. And it wasn't until I let all of that go that I said, fuck it. I'm just going to go all in, and I'm just going to care less about it having to be perfect and less about what people think of me. And that process in and of itself, like I made that leap, and that process in and of itself for me was quite liberating, and it helped me see a very different version of myself, and it helped me behave differently. And I started communicating differently with myself and with others. My self-speak started to change. Yeah. And it was more compassionate. It was a little bit nicer, and it wasn't as harsh, because I've had a very harsh inner voice. Yeah. And that was, again, quite freeing. And I don't know any human being that doesn't want to feel free, however the fuck they want to define freedom.
And the way you talk to yourself, like most conversations you have are in your head. Yeah. You know? And that's the way you communicate with yourself is huge. And I think this all really segues nicely into the conversation we were having earlier. Oh, okay. I guess we want to. he's just kind of blanket over the whole thing.
He's a beautiful human being.
He is, man. I honor the divinity within him. I try. I do my best. I think this feeds nicely into the idea and the thing that I hear so often from women, mostly on Instagram, or reaching out DMs, or writing in these little Q&A boxes we drop on the Instagram stories. Yeah. There are just no good men out there. Yeah, that's the narrative. Right. There's not.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Just me and Steph. We're the only good ones that were left, and we're swooped up right now.
You're way better than me.
Oh, give me a break. Just because I'm taller.
Yeah, that's
I'm taller, so I have more privilege than you do.
Yeah, that's true. And that, you know what? There's actually truth in what you're saying. Is that what you just said then? You're taller and you have more privilege than I do. Yeah, really you do.
I do.
Okay, all jokes aside, there are amazing men out there. I remember what we said, you know, what I believe you agreed with as well, that men are amazing creatures. Yeah. We are inherently fucking epic.
We're really funny if you like take a step back and watch our shit.
It's super funny. It's super funny.
It's like a rom-com if you just like give it a chance.
All you need to do is ask Christine when I'm doing something technical, or I'm at something and I'm get frustrated. I'm like, oh. Yeah. I'm a comedy show. But there are many great men out there, and there are many men doing the work. And I think it's that was it Bader-Meinhof effect, where if you believe, and if you're looking for a red BMW, you're going to see red BMWs everywhere, because it becomes your focus of attention. So your reticular activating system is on fire, right? Yeah. If you think and believe that there are no good men out there, and you're focusing on no good men, well, that's all you're going to see. That's all you're going to bring in, because you're literally going to block out everything else. And so there are good men out there. And I think there are so many things, and we spoke about this, there are so many things that need to happen for us to begin to notice. If you're a woman specifically, because you mentioned women, and you're looking for a good man in a romantic partnership, there's so many things that need to happen. Firstly, we need to believe and know that there are good men out there. Like, really hold on to that belief and start creating evidence of that in your world.
Yeah, because you use confirmation bias for your own benefit.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Not to tell yourself some bullshit story. Because human nature is confirmation bias is a big part of the way that our fucking brain works.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think the second thing is we need to clear up our own stuff. And that's a tough one. And most people don't want to hear that. And even today, myself, I don't want to hear that sometimes. I don't want to hear that I haven't worked on something, or I haven't finalized something, or there's something within me that I'm still behaving in a way that's unhealthy and actually coming from old pain or something like that. You know, I don't want to hear that sometimes, but I do want to hear it, because if it helps me clear it up and I stop acting in that way, and I can have a better life and a more fulfilling life, and a life of meaning, and a life with greater ease. Not that I'm averse to challenge. I love challenge. But I'm going to do that, and I want to do that. And sometimes there's subtleties in our behavior that we're not picking up on. And so I always say, speak to friends that you trust, you respect, you revere. Speak to someone that can give you an honest reflection, an objective as possible reflection on who you are. And if you don't have that type of person in your life, I definitely suggest you get friends that you create friendships that have that.
Somewhere.
Find them somewhere, even if you have to buy them. But seek some professional help as well to go into the nuances of who you are. If you're single, great. Use this opportunity to refine who you are and who you want to be and get really clear on what you want. And I'm not necessarily talking to creating a list. He has to have blonde hair. He needs to be 6'3". He needs to come from this part of Manhattan. He has to come from this family lineage. You can go into those details, but I think there's something to be said for the imagination and surprise, like the novelty of something new as well. And so be specific with the essence of the human being you want to attract in your life, but also get clear that the quality of that human being is largely going to be predicated on the quality of how you treat yourself, where you're at in your own life, what you've cleared up, how clear you are on your vision for self, how you conduct yourself, how you behave, how you feel, think, believe, all of that. And sometimes we forget that and we just want because we live in an entitled culture as well. We want everything done for us and we want it now.
Yeah, just because we want it.
Yeah, just
It's
because
I want it and it exists, I should have it because I want it.
And I want to say as well, there are many people out there that are really doing the work and really sincere and really looking at their stuff, and they're still not quite in the intimate romantic partnerships that they want to be in. And all I can say there is that patience is a virtue, and just keep at it. Don't ever lose hope. Why would you want to stop being a good human being? Be a solid human being for you.
Yeah.
Do it for the intrinsic value of how it actually benefits you, and the rest will come. It's like low drag, low drag, low attachment. Like move forward with momentum in your life, but without the attachment, the fixation on it has to be this particular way.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that. And I think, one thing when I hear this come my way, like this, whether it's whatever wave, it's one of Kelly's friends or somebody's like, there's no good guys out there. Why aren't there more guys like you? And I'm like, homegirl, you don't want to date me, I promise.
I'll put my hand up and agree with that, actually.
You don't know what kind of can of worms you're opening there. But I think one of the things that I like to, even with my clients, and I work on this, because this is a narrative that gets played out a ton, even if it's not verbally spoken, it's a belief. And when you think about that, and it's usually people that fancy themselves as somebody who's quote unquote done the work.
Yeah.
And I look at this and I'm saying, okay, are you looking for somebody who's done the same kind of work with you and had the same progress in the way that you feel is the right way? So then you're attached to your progress and your process, and you're projecting that onto somebody else. And then I look at this and I'm like, what we were talking about last night, we've spoken about a little bit on this podcast, is the role of the feminine a lot of times in these relationships, and that doesn't mean male, female, just the feminine in general is a grounding force.
Yes.
And can you channel that grounding force in yourself and hold a space for someone to express themselves without judgment, learn more about themselves, because your presence in their life creates that possibility for them that they may not have gotten somewhere else? Or are you coming in with a preconceived idea of what growth, potential, and possibility are, and just projecting that onto somebody else because that's what you feel that you need deeply, or you've convinced yourself that that's what you need, and you're really just getting in your own way.
Oh yeah.
And you're looking at the world in a way that is so refined and so I don't even want to say just like dogmatic. And a lot of times you're wanting a man to have progressed down your feminine journey.
And which is a big ask, right? And
it's a big ask.
And really, does the feminine really want that though?
Yeah,
she wants the polar opposite.
Do you really want that? And then they'll find that. Inevitably, I hope that this happens for everyone that says that out there, that wants that. It's like, find that and see how that works for you.
Yeah, and it won't. And there's a couple of things that you said there. Firstly, I think growth is forever. It's a forever thing until we're physically dead or consciousness is no longer active per se. It's going to always be there. Growth. So the work is never done.
Yeah.
The work is really never done. And
you can't really have done the work. You're doing the work.
Always. I think always at different levels. You go through different experiences in life and it elicits a different version of yourself. I think that's really important to understand. And then second to that is when we're looking for people or we're looking for someone to match and mirror us, how well do we know ourselves that we can actually articulate what we want?
Yeah. And articulate it articulate with your actions too.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important part because we talk about it all. We can talk about this shit all fucking day. But are you acting in a way that the person that you want to be with would find attractive and admirable and respectable?
And many people don't want to admit that. I know that when I was behaving in certain ways, when I was unfaithful in relationships, when I wasn't speaking my truth, when I was dishonest with how I was feeling and how I was being, and I was treating others shortly and with frustration and agitation, and I wasn't really present. I wasn't being honourable to myself or to them in any capacity, yet I was expecting so much from them.
Yeah.
And that's that entitlement again. And that arrogance, and it's hard when you're in that. Like, it's easier now for me to say, I was this, I was that, I behaved this way, I was arrogant, I was angry, I was unfaithful, I was dishonest. It's easier to say now. When you're in it though, when I was in it, it's very hard for my ego self to really take ownership of that and be responsible for that. But that's the the quote unquote work as well that we need to do. And so irrespective of where you're at, is can you look at those things in your life that need evolution or growth, and can you attune to them to grow for yourself because you want to live a more fulfilling life?
Yeah. Damn. I love that. That's a great place to wrap this thing up. Steph, where can everybody find you out on the interwebs?
On the world wide webs, Stefanos Sifandos on Instagram and Facebook, and stefanosifandos.com for my website.
Boom. I'll put all those in the description. And man, this has been fun. Thanks for
Thank
dropping
you,
by.
brother, always. Thank you so much.
That is the show, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. If you love what Steph is about, make sure to go check him out on Instagram. He's got links there to all of a lot of free content, really good content. And it's, like I said, it's free. It's there for you. Lots to learn, lots to apply, lots of things you can do to make your life better. Like I said earlier, one of those things is the Lifestyle Design Program. I've been blown away with the success of the Lifestyle Design Program, actually. I'm so grateful for everybody who's been a part of that. And now, after doing it for several years, I kind of reflect back on how that all came about. And it's just kind of wild, actually. But here we are. We're doing it, and it's working. So if you're curious about that, go to gettherealness.com, check it out, and let's jump on the phone, talk a little bit. And if you want, zero context life advice, which for whatever reason has been really popular lately, people want handwritten letters, just giving them life advice with zero context. Make sure to leave a review on the podcast on Apple Podcasts, on the Apple Podcasts app, and shoot me a screenshot. Let me know, send me your address and all that juicy info, and I'll get a handwritten letter out to you soon. And I honestly was working on them last night. I have a hard time. It's hard to figure out, like, what the hell do I need to say to this person that I've never met before? But I'm excited about it. It's fun. I'll get into a flow with it, as with everything. It's just that first few are kind of goofy. But I really appreciate you guys. The podcast has been growing lately, and a lot of more reviews have come in, and it's just one of those things that gives me like this overwhelming sense of gratitude for everybody who's a part of the show. So again, thank you so much for the support. And sharing the show with a friend, and if you feel compelled to maybe steal all of your coworkers' phones for a little while during the day and writing a review on their phones, because, they would love the podcast if they listen to it, maybe get them to listen to the podcast too, but most importantly, stealing their phones and writing reviews on the pod, that would be great too. There's always all kinds of ways you can support. Just get creative. Maybe put up a little sign in the break room that says, like, listen to this fucking podcast. That would be cool. Shoot me a picture of that. I'll definitely send you something cool then. All kinds of cool stuff coming up, y'all. We've got a realness retreat that we're working on getting the dates finalized for. So if you're curious about heading down to Costa Rica, doing some ayahuasca, being around amazing people, a really curated group of awesome people, then make sure to go to gettherealness.com. Just drop your email in there, and you'll stay on the list and stay updated with any kind of information. And we'll get that all nailed down. You'll be the first to know. Thank you guys so much for being so supportive and so loving, and just be good to each other out there. YOLO. You only live once, so don't be a fucking asshole, because that's just kind of the waste. Unless you need to be an asshole sometimes, but not all the time, and not unnecessarily. If you make it to the end of the show, you have a special place in my heart. Love you guys. We'll see y'all next time. Much love, hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.